So this is probably the last video for the CoCoA mini course, and here I want to show what to do when you've come up with your own new function or functions and you want to add them both to CoCoA-Lib and make them accessible through CoCoA-5. So as I mentioned before, this could also actually be useful if you're wanting to test your CoCoA-Lib functions, since CoCoA-5 is a convenient way of giving input to them. So we'll start with this wonderful new function that I've just written. We'll assume that I've tested it and made sure that it works. So it's inside a copy of xempty, which I call demo2, and the functions I've decided to call JohnFunc, and we can see here that it returns a ring element and it takes as argument a ring element, and here's the definition. And we're going to do this by copying the function into a new source file. We'll also have to make a header file for it, and then we'll see what else we need to do. So I'm happy that my function works. I've already tested it lots, as you can see in the code here. So I'll ask Emacs to take a copy of it here. So I've done that. Now I have to open a new file. So actually perhaps I'll do this by going into the shell. So I'm at the root directory. So I was in examples. I'm at the root directory, and I'm going to put the new function inside a new file in algebraic core, and I'll call the file, I'll give it a sort of helpful name. So this is actually an operation on, the intention is it's an operation on, well, actually it's ring elements. So maybe I'll just give the so what do we have? Ring. I was going to put it into sparse polyring ops, but I call it ring lm ops JohnFunc .c, because it's the file that contains the definition. So this is a completely new file. It doesn't exist. So it's empty, and I now put the definition in there. Oh, let's make it bigger so you can see it. So that's the start. Actually, I made a mistake here, because I also it would be handy to insert into this. So let's open something called per file. This is a starting point that you might want to put your code into. So we'll actually take a complete copy of this. So the easy way for me to do this, I happen to know how to do this directly in Emacs, so I do it this way. So I've just inserted it. Catch is that I should have done that before putting my function definition in. So everything that's part of CoCoA-Lib should go inside namespace CoCoA. We didn't really say too much about what namespaces are. The advantage of putting them in the namespace CoCoA is it doesn't matter if the function has the same name as a function, say, defined in the standard template library, or a function defined in someone else's program. Because implicitly, when we put it inside the namespace CoCoA, the function name gets a prefix CoCoA : Actually, to be really precise, it gets a prefix : CoCoA : So file looks like this. Well, let's update the year. This is about the GPL license. You may or may not want to use that. If you really contribute it to CoCoA, we would like you to, in fact, we would like you to give us the copyright so we can distribute it without having to ask you every time. This we don't need to include anything from the standard library. So here's the function. This is something that we use for CVS. You can actually skip all this part here if you really want. It's nothing terribly useful. I'll leave it there for the time being. I'm not planning to put this into CVS. So I'll add this, and then after this demo, I'll have to remove it all. So what's this include CoCoA header file? Well, this is, I guess, what we're about to see now. So it's useful that a header file should have a name, essentially the name as the file, the .c file I've got here. So I called it ring lm ops-johnfunc. So it's normal that this should have the same name, but it ends with a .h instead of a .c. Now I can save that. Now I actually have to create the header file as well. So so we saved this file for the moment. For the header file, oops, don't want this anymore. For the header file, I now go up to include CoCoA, and I want to open the header file here. So that was ring lm ops, hope I'm spelling it correctly, johnfunc.h. So I created a new file, and once again we have a per file that it's a good idea to put in here. So as you can change the year. So here we have a feature that comes from C. I forget what the nickname for it was. So it's a good idea to put in here the name of the file. So it was ring lm ops. Now I used a minus sign. We can't use a minus sign here, so I'll use an underscore. Ring lm ops John Func. And the second one's going to be exactly the same. There's an easy way to do this here with Emacs. Anyway, and this is more things to do with the GPL. Skip over this for a moment, and also I'll clean up this junk at the bottom. Let's just get rid of it all. That's something else. Oh no, I got rid of a bit too much. So I need to leave this hash endif at the bottom. Actually, this is also not true. I deleted it all. So far this function, this header file is not doing much. So what we actually need to put in here is the signature of my function. So I can get that from ring lm johnfunc.c. So the signature is essentially the return type, the name of the function, and the types of the arguments. So I've simply copied it from the other file, and I have to put a semicolon at the end. So that's how the compiler knows that what we have here is a declaration rather than a definition. So after reading here, so it sees a type, it sees the name of a function, open brackets, another type, name of the parameter, close brackets, and it expects one of two possible things next. Either a semicolon, in which case it's a declaration, or an open curly brackets, which is what we had down here, in which case it's the beginning of the definition. So the point of the header file here is this is enough information for the compiler to be able to compile programs that use johnfunc. The linker will then put in the correct definition at the right place. We haven't yet finished, so we've now got the this is the declaration of the function. We also need to know what includes we need here. Remember, C++ is extremely small language. It doesn't know much at all. Almost everything is defined in libraries one way or another. And the CoCoA things are defined in the CoCoA library. And so we actually have to put in an include here, CoCoA/, that means it comes from the CoCoA library. We don't need config, but we do need something to tell the compiler that ring-lm is a recognized type. And that actually comes from the file ring.h. iOS FUD, we don't need to define any printing operators, so we can actually get rid of that. We don't need anything else from the standard library. We don't need vectors or anything else. So this is actually a very simple file. So I've saved that. So I now have a header file here, johnfunc.h, that may include other header files, just so that all the types here are known. If you're missing something, then when you try to compile it, the compiler will tell you, I don't know what ring-lm is. So what changes do we have to do here? We had to change this, so it's called an include guard. So each include header file has one of these. This is simply used by the compiler to stop you, if you reread the file by accident somewhere, it's clever, and this trick here tells the compiler really to read it just once. There ought to be a more economical way of doing it, but that's how it's done currently. So we created a header file, and we created a .c file. So now we still actually need to do something more, but I'll show you what happens if we don't do it. So we want to try compiling it. So we go back up to the CoCoA root, and we'll be cautious and we'll try to compile just the CoCoA library. So we do make lib, and we will get some errors almost immediately. Oh, this is quite a big looking error. This is produced actually by the a CoCoA thing that checks the situation. Error, headers have changed. New header files have appeared. This one, ringlm ops johnfunc.h. So we added this after making several mistakes a few years ago, and when we've forgotten to take into account new header files and so on. So this is a safety mechanism. Then it says here, advice, if the current headers are correct, and this is indeed correct, we've added a new one, and the name is exactly what we wanted, then run these two, should be 3 commands. I'll have to change that. Run these 3 commands. Alternative, if they are not correct, please remove any headers not belonging to CoCoA-Lib. So we run these 3 commands. The easiest way is just to type them in. Push d include CoCoA /make unified header.sh. It'll print out something. Rebuilding unified header file for CoCoA-Lib version 99717. Moved existing header file into library.h.old. So we do this just in case somehow you ran this command and realized, no, I didn't want that. You can still get the old version, one version back you can get from here. And then we do the popd. That puts me back to where I was. So CoCoA does try to do some extra checks just in case there are strange things going on. Let's try making the library again. We'll get another error, a different one. Oh, it's rebuilding dependencies. Yeah, great. We have to wait a short while it does that. It's going to do it for the whole of CoCoA-Lib because it needs to know which files depend on other ones. Since something has changed, so there's a new header file has appeared, it checks to make sure who actually needs it. So it's built the header files, error, new source files, ringlm ops johnfunc.c. If you want to add these files to the CoCoA-Lib sources, you must edit CoCoA-Lib circ algebraic core makefile and add the new names to the variable srcs. You will find it on line 15. Otherwise, move the files elsewhere, for example, to the examples directory, and then this is makefile saying something failed. So here is advice. So we have to edit CoCoA-Lib circ algebraic core makefile. And then something about line 15 probably. So let's open that. src algebraic core makefile. Oh yes, let's make it bigger so you can see it. And it did say something about srcs. So if we go back quickly, there was add the new names to the variable srcs. Now, I don't expect you to learn the syntax for makefile, but you can probably make a good guess from what we see here. So we have lots of lines. So I guess the backslash at the end of the line actually means continue on the next line. And on each line, we seem to have a name.c, another name.c, and so on. So I'll take this line, it's relatively short, and I'll add it here. So so the name of the file was ringlm ops minus johnfunc.c, and I spelled it wrong. Johnfunc.c. That seems to be correct. Now I save it. Go back to the shell. So I've done what it says here. Let's try once again making the library. So, of course, I've done this many times. I knew that I had to register the header file and the implementation file, but I showed you this so you see what happens if you don't do it. Now this should compile. Bother, didn't. Aha. So I've missed, it doesn't know what the plus operator is. I've missed the relevant include. No, I didn't expect, to be honest, but anyway. And now we got, so the compiler produces lots and lots of error messages. I don't know how to add a const ring-lm alias. That's the actual name that we get there, and an int. I don't know how to do it. The ones I do know about are all these. So actually, why? Oh, yes. So this is the one it should have used, but it didn't. That's very annoying. Yes, I know. Yes, this is a bit tricky. It might take you a while to figure that out. So we have to go. I go back to the .c file. So you might wonder, why have I got all this complication here when it worked just fine in my xempty? Well, xempty automatically includes everything that CoCoA-Lib defines. Here, the only thing that it knew about was what's in johnfunc.h, and that was the declaration of the function johnfunc and the definition of ring and ring-lm. So here we'll have to add another include, always from CoCoA, and what we're actually missing is machine int.h. Now I put it here in the implementation file because machine int, knowledge of machine int is not needed when I make the declaration. So it's normal to put includes, I suppose, as low as you can get, if you like, where the header file is sort of one step above the implementation file. So with luck, this will now do it. So it now knows what machine int is, and it knows in particular it can automatically build a machine int from the constant 1 here. I could also have got around it a different way, but so we'll skip over all these errors. So this is listing all the operator pluses it knows, and it says these are the ones I know. None of them applies in this case. And in fact, that was helpful to me because I expected it to apply this one and it didn't. So I then had to ask myself, why is it not applying this? And because I forgot to tell it about machine int, which is why I needed to put the include that. Let's try compiling again. So we have more luck this time. Okay, good. It compiled it, so, and even printed out a little message, compiling ring-lm ops johnfunc.o. Good. So I've now added johnfunc.o to CoCoA-Lib. I'm going to skip it, of course. We should also put in documentation for johnfunc. Since I'm not planning to leave it there, it's only for a demo, I'm not going to put the documentation in. So this was the first part, so it's now actually part of CoCoA-Lib. But I'd also like it to be available in CoCoA 5. And this one's relatively easy. Let's go back to the header file for a moment. So here's the header file. And we see that the signature is it's got a ring-lm, its name is johnfunc, and it really takes another ring-lm here. Now this is the nice easy case, one which I had hoped to use before but didn't quite work. So we go into where the CoCoA source code is, circ CoCoA 5, ls, we'll have a quick look at what the files are. And where's it gone? Why have I got so much junk here? Built-in one-liners.cocoalib.c. Oh, these funny names here are because I got CVS activated, so it's telling me that I've changed this compared to the last version on CVS. You can ignore these. You shouldn't get those. So this is the file I want to add it to. I think I can put it into built-in one-liners, and with luck it'll work this time. Built-in one-liners CoCoA-Lib. Functions on big int. It's not really a function on big int. Functions on big rat. Functions on ring-lm. Here we go. Let's put it in here. And I'll put it right at the start so I can find it easily to remove it at the end, since I'm not planning to leave it there. So I've just copied the first line there. This is for the function canonical repra. It's not what I want. What I want is JohnFunc. So I have to type in the name again. So this is JohnFunc. It's not put in by Anna Bigatti, it's put in by John. So I save it. So it takes a ring-lm. So it has one argument, which is of type ring-lm. It's called JohnFunc, and some template magic sorts out the return type. Now that should be it. I should now be able to compile CoCoA-5 and have a JohnFunc in it. So let's go back to my shell. So I'm already in the correct directory to make CoCoA-5. Make CoCoA-5. Oh no. Since I've changed the header files in CoCoA-Lib, it's probably going to recompile everything in CoCoA-5. That takes a while. Let's see. Yes, you'll have to be a bit patient here. So it hasn't even yet looked at the built-in one-liners that I actually changed. So it's recompiling all these because it noticed that CoCoA-Lib had changed. And so it, built-in function, oh no, it's built-in function, we want built-in one-liners. We'll have to watch that to see if anything goes wrong with built-in one-liners. Yeah, so compiling CoCoA-5 is a bit slow. We just need to be patient here. Built-in one-liners, CoCoA-Lib.o, it's compiling that. So all this junk here that it's printing out is the actual command it's running. It's not useful most of the time, but if something does go wrong, it can be helpful to see what the computer was actually told to do, or exactly what arguments the compiler had. So I think we're nearly there now. As I mentioned before, I have lots of extensions to CoCoA Active, so they all have to be compiled. Okay, good. Seems to have done it. Let's try running CoCoA-5. So it didn't give any errors. That's good. Let's try starting CoCoA-5. Here it is. Oh, this is an old one that I'd left lying around. Anyway, I'll make it bigger. Let's just check the version. So it's 12.16. Clock on the computer says 12.17. So yes, I think it's the one I've just made. Now we can try the new JohnFunc. Let's see if it can add one-to-one. This should fail. Why will it fail? People here are looking at me. Let's see what error it gives. Error. Expecting type ring-lm but found type int. Indeed, we told it that JohnFunc works just with ring elements. So let's try JohnFunc with x. So we already know that we start off with a ring QQ of XYZ, so x is a ring element. And it works. Now, of course, if I ask the CoCoA manual, what can you tell me about JohnFunc? No matches for JohnFunc. I didn't write any documentation. So I'd have to write documentation both for CoCoA-Lib and for CoCoA-5 if I really want to add a function. With luck, you can write the documentation for one of them and more or less copy it over for the other one. Or at least the content should be more or less the same. So, quick summary. So what I've done is I've taken a function that I had developed inside a copy of xempty. I copied it over to, so I copied it over to a .c file, but it's better. It was convenient to include something that came from per file. Maybe I'll change the name of that, try to make it more obvious what to do. And then I put the definition inside the namespace CoCoA. That's very important. If you don't put it inside the namespace CoCoA, the rest won't work. So that was a .c file. I then took the signature here and put that into a .h file. Once again, I copied some sort of boilerplate stuff from a template file, well, per file. Once again, we have to put things inside CoCoA, namespace CoCoA. So this is a copy of the first time, but it has a semicolon at the end, rather than the open curly brackets for the beginning of a definition. Also, I had to include further files here, in this case ring.h, so that which tells C++ what a ring is and what a ring LM is, and also what this thing is. That was more or less all here. Our first attempt at compiling didn't work because we realized we had to put some extra includes here. That we discovered from error messages from the compiler. So I created these two files. I then had to modify two more things. So one was I had to modify the make file here by inserting the name. But if I forget to do that, the CoCoA build system tells me what to do, more or less. So I had to modify this. And where's my shell gone? Oh, I typed in the wrong thing. And I had to so I had to deal with this one when it says new headers have appeared, because I created a new header. What I normally do is I don't bother to I forget about the headers. The message comes up and say, oh yes, that's what I need. I can just check quickly, yes, I've spelt the name correctly. I then follow these 3 lines here, not 2, 3. So that's fixed the headers. I've changed the srcs in the make file. CoCoA-Lib should then work, assuming I have all the includes I need. And then this was a relatively easy case. Didn't have any problems with indexes changing by 1, or I forgot what the other problem was. Oh yes, it was for resultant when we had slightly different types for the arguments. This was the easy case, and I could then add a single line. Okay, it's now right down here. A single line to this function built-in one-liners.c, and all the rest is done by a mixture of macros and template magic, thanks to Giovanni Lagorio. He worked this all out. So in this case, this was a nice function in CoCoA-Lib, and we just had to add one line to make it available to CoCoA 5. As I said, documentation I've skipped. That's pretty much all you need to do. So I think I'll stop there.